This week on the podcast, I'm having a chat with Captain Paul Watson. He's a marine conservationist. He was one of the co-founders of Greenpeace, and he set up the Sea Shepherd Society, which turned into a television documentary on Animal Planet called Whale Wars, which I used to watch, really enjoyed. He's also been on Interpol's Most Wanted list, so he's got some interesting views on world politics, a bunch of which I agree with. So I hope you enjoy the podcast. Before we move on to that, a message about the sponsor. Enjoy. Cheers. This podcast episode is sponsored by a company that is literally saving lives by providing fresh drinking water to cruisers and oceanfaring humans all over the planet. That company is Seawater Pro, based out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in the great country of America. Seawater Pro cares about your health and your hydration levels. Without them, I won't be able to make tea, and I'd probably be dead by now, actually, all dried up. So thank you to Seawater Pro for hydrating my family and blessing me every day with my morning cup of Earl Grey. Seawater Pro makes incredibly simple and reliable water makers in modular and portable format, and also just started producing DC air conditioning units. So not only do they care about your H2O levels, but they also care about your core body temperature and your romantic life. Try charming your wife in a sweat-soaked mattress in the middle of summer. Difficult times, guys. Seawater Pro has the solution, an incredible company. With water makers starting at $3,495 and air conditioning units at $4,995, it's a company that not only cares about your health, your soul and your spirit, but also your finances and your cash flow. Check out seawaterpro.com to see their range of life-saving equipment and use the code TOC100, that's Tangerine Orange Clementine 100, for $100 American off your bill at checkout. Don't be a victim to an early dehydrated death. Buy a water maker from Seawater Pro. Probably just going back to the beginning of your career of activism, I suppose, because I know that you worked on the ocean when you first started out. Is there something specific that you saw, witnessed, or just began to learn that brought you into this life? Was it like an episode, or was it a series of things? But what triggered this whole movement for you?
Well, I was raised in a fishing village in eastern Canada, so very close to the ocean, and saw a lot of whales and seals and a lot of marine life. But when I was 10 years old, I spent a summer swimming with a family of beavers in the forest nearby.
Oh, nice.
And had a wonderful time. And the next summer, when I went back when I was 11, I couldn't find them anymore, and began to ask questions, found out trappers had taken them all out that winter. So that made me quite angry. So that winter, the next one
Yeah.
at 11, I walked the trap lines to free the animals, and I destroyed the traps. So that's how I really began any activism. But I left home at 17. I joined the Norwegian Merchant Marine. I was in the Swedish Merchant Marine, the Canadian Coast Guard. And then in 1969, I was part of the crew that went up to oppose nuclear testing in Amchick Island in the Aleutians. And out of that meeting, at one of the early meetings, somebody left and flashed a peace sign. And Bill Darnell, I remember, he said, make it a Greenpeace. And Bob Hunter said, great name for the boat. So we named the boat the Greenpeace. And then in 1972, we changed the name of the Don't Make a Wave Committee, which is what the group was. And we changed that to the Greenpeace Foundation. So I was with Greenpeace for 7 years, first mate on all of the early voyages. And
Yeah.
then I left in 77 and, established the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. And I was with Sea Shepherd until 2022, and then they forced me out of the organization because the powers that be had come into play and wanted to go mainstream, and I refused to do that. So they said I was too controversial and too confrontational, and so I was outed and had to start all over again. Although I continue to work with Sea Shepherd France, Brazil, and the UK.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So it all started with your love for beavers, actually, didn't it? If you want to simplify it.
Well, I was certainly concerned about all wildlife, but I did have a
Yeah.
good relationship with this beaver pond and the beaver families in the pond.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the gorgeous animals. I always love when we go to Zero Wildlife Place and the beavers are there. Um, okay, so just taking it back to the start a little bit, like you were a founding member of Greenpeace. Is this back in the 70s, like mid 70s?
Well, the voyage to Amchitka was in 1971, and then we
Right.
established the Greenpeace Foundation in 1972.
Yeah.
I was the eighth founding member. My membership number is 007 because Bob Hunter's was 000. And
Right.
so was one of the first of the 12 directors.
That's amazing. So what was the I as a kid I remember like I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s really, but Greenpeace were doing pretty relevant stuff even in the 90s. You saw them on the news, you paid attention. What was what was the original concept behind that and like what is it now? Because you went through a transition with Greenpeace, you ended up leaving and then doing your own thing. So how did that change from what you thought it was when you first started?
Well, it started to change in '77, the year that I actually was dismissed from Greenpeace because I was a campaign leader for the seal campaigns off of Labrador. And there's a point where a sealer was about to kill a baby seal. I ran forward and I pulled the club out of his hand and threw it in the water. And then I picked up the seal and took it to safety.
Right.
And the board of directors from Greenpeace said that they accused me of theft and vandalism. I stole the man's club and destroyed it. And I said, yeah, but I saved the life of the seal. And he said, well, we can't condone that's a violent act. I said, there's nothing violent about it. Nobody was injured.
No.
And the seal club to me is not a piece of property. It's a weapon meant to kill. And so I had no problem with that.
Yeah.
They said that it went against their values, whatever their values were. So I set up Sea Shepherd with a specific strategy, which I called aggressive nonviolence, to aggressively intervene, but to not cause injury. And after 50 years,
Yeah.
never caused a single injury, nor have I ever been convicted of a felony crime. So we've been operating within the boundaries of the law and practicality, but we've been
Yeah.
doing aggressively intervening, blocking, harassing, shutting down these operations. So that was a big difference between Greenpeace and what I was doing. But in
Mm.
2022, they decided that they wanted to go more. The problem was we had this very successful TV show called Whale Wars that brought in a lot of support.
Yeah.
And the more support, the more money it brought in. And once you get the money, then you got people who now have got a vested interest in their jobs and job security and everything. And
Yeah.
these are people I knew for many years, some of them up to 20 years. But they decided that their job security was more important than our original objectives and strategies. And I mean, they actually offered me a great deal of money to be the figurehead and say nothing, do nothing, write nothing, post nothing, just shut up and be a good boy. And I said,
Mm.
"No, I'm not going to do that." So I set up the Captain Paul Watson Foundation, which is it's an ongoing movement. The Sea Shepherd movement continues. What they did was they basically destroyed the movement by putting the power into this organization that they set up. Because I never
Yeah.
set up Sea Shepherd to be an organization. I set it up originally to be a movement of independent entities around the world. And what they did is that they covertly registered trademarks, and then they claim that they own the logos I designed and they own the name that I created,
All
and
right.
they forced me out. But the money was never important to me, so we just carry on. And in fact, I always think we accomplish more with little money than we do with more money. So, uh,
Maybe we've got less interference, haven't we?
yeah, well, it's just because people become, I don't know, they compromise by the fact that if they're getting paid really well, and
Yeah.
they're now become afraid of losing their jobs. And I was a big fear that they were going to lose their job because I was saying things they didn't want, that shouldn't be said, or doing things they didn't want to see being done. In other words, I was too controversial.
Yeah, I mean, I get it's the way it goes, isn't it? With a lot of these foundations, and you get it now with a lot of like environmental activism and stuff in the UK. As soon as it turns into a big thing, you're mixing in a network as well. Like you're then meeting with politicians and fundraisers, and yeah, it's just a whole different set of rules that you've got to stick to. That's pretty bizarre that Greenpeace like said that you saving a seal's life and like destroying a weapon was like not their thing. I don't know. I just presumed that
Well,
that would exactly be their thing.
Greenpeace was formed out of two groups, the Sierra Club, environmental side, and the Quakers, which was sort of the
Yeah.
religious. The Quaker philosophy is bearing witness. Don't get involved, just bear witness. It's something I never really could understand. But that
Mm.
was the thing is that if you intervene physically like I was doing, that was considered non-acceptable.
Yeah.
Greenpeace has then gone on though to become very quite a big corporate green entity, and
Yeah.
because of its sheer size, it does carry a lot of weight. in things. And Greenpeace actually rose out of obscurity in 1986, really, when the French government sank the Rainbow Warrior, and that gave, ironically enough, gave Greenpeace an incredible amount of credibility and put them on the map.
Mm.
And then last month, another incident put them on the map even more so, as Energy Incorporated won a lawsuit against Greenpeace for $700 million, which I thought was a brilliant move for Greenpeace because, Greenpeace, some of them are saying, oh, poor us, we got to pay 700 million. Oh, it's absolutely incredible. What it shows is that you're such a threat to the fossil fuel industry that they took you to court and manipulated this $700 million fine, which they're never going to pay because
Right,
they
good.
don't have the
Okay.
money. But it'll be just drag on and appeals and appeals. Meanwhile, Greenpeace will be able to raise funds off this. And eventually there will be a change of administration in the United States. Trump will be out and a new administration will be in and the whole thing will be just thrown out. So, I think I think from Greenpeace's point of view, it was probably one of the best things that's happened to them for a long time. Now, this was over the
Mm.
Standing Rock reservation, the pipeline going to the Standing Rock reservation.
Yeah.
And basically, Greenpeace had a minor part of it, but the fossil fuel industry decided to, use Greenpeace to send a lesson instead of, the real people who were responsible were the indigenous peoples who are doing that. But they thought that they would use Greenpeace as a way to send that message. And I mean, I
Mm.
think Greenpeace comes out on top.
So who is actually suing Greenpeace? Like
Well,
it's the
Energy
operator.
Incorporated, this pipeline people, who want to put the pipeline through the indigenous people's lands.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really agree with that type of thing. So yeah, fair enough. I mean that yeah, I mean it's great PR, really. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
like
like
they're under attack.
I ran into the head of Greenpeace International last month, and I said, and he was talking. I said, this is probably the best thing that's happened to you in years. You should take it, look at the positive side of it. The positive side is that you're such a threat to the fossil fuel industry, or they perceive you to be such a threat that they're willing to put you on trial in a rigged jury trial in an area of where the jury is mainly fossil fuel employees, and
Yeah.
it was a guarantee that you're going to be convicted. But any appeal process is going to certainly side with Greenpeace when they take a look at all of the facts outside of that particular area where the trial took place.
Yeah. I mean, it's just very bad PR for any government or Supreme Court to be ruling against Greenpeace on a case like that as well. I remember paying close attention to that in the news. Like Greenpeace were there, but they weren't creating mass agitation. There was just a lot of people there in general. It just seems like stupid that they'd highlight them. I can't imagine that actually getting through. Like if it goes to appeal, I'm sure there'll
Oh,
be something on that.
right now we're in the political dark ages in the United States, but the time will come over and things will change around. They usually do. I mean, Trump could be out in 2 years if people overturn the election. I mean, the congressional elections. If there's a Democratic House and Democratic Senate, then they can impeach the guy. But and if
Yeah,
not, in 4 years he'll be gone anyway. But and although he's trying to go for another 4 year period, but I don't think that's possible. But
he
you never
might
know.
try.
I mean, they're trying very hard to become an authoritarian sort of state, and he wants to be king. Not even dictator. He wants to be king. He actually said that. Yeah,
He said he wanted to be Pope the other day as well, which was a new one.
man, the man is crazy. I mean, he's totally crazy. It's one of the most. I don't think that when they founded the United States that anybody could have predicted that this kind of personality would come to the forefront. He wants to put his image on Mount Rushmore. He wants to put his picture on the $100 bill. Yesterday he wants to rename the Persian Gulf the Gulf of Arabia.
Well, actually, that's probably Saudi that's requesting that because I lived in the Gulf for
Yeah.
8 years. They all refer to it as the Gulf of Arabia. It's only the Iranians, it's not like the old school
Yeah.
Persians, but the Iranians that refer to it as that.
Well, the rest of
Um,
the world calls it the Persian Gulf. I know.
I know, yeah, they still do, yeah.
I sailed in there as on Norwegian merchant ships years ago. It was Persian
Mm.
Gulf, always will be.
Yeah, I think politics, isn't it? It's all about getting little wins here and there. It's not about doing anything real, to be honest. You know what, mate? That could lead on to some good questions. I mean, you have operated within the system of politics your entire life as long as you've been an activist, and when you were in the merchant navies as well, actually, to a certain extent. Um, You have been talking about issues that have been needed to have spoke about for decades now, and I don't think anybody can argue with any point that you make. And even controversial stuff, like you just mentioned before with the seal, maybe that's controversial, I don't know, or some of the work you did with Sea Shepherd. No, I don't think anybody can say that what you're doing is for the wrong reason, right? So, why is it the case that 20, 30, 40 years later you've still got countries in like Europe that you know treat these creatures terribly? um how is that the way it is? Like, what part of the system is not paying attention or just not taking it seriously?
Well, we have the situation where governments subsidize these activities. Nobody's made any money out of whaling or sealing for decades. Uh,
Right.
they exist because of massive government subsidies. The Japanese whaling industry gets about 30 million a year in subsidies. The Canadian seal hunt about 20 million a year in subsidies. Internationally, commercial fisheries are prime subsidies about 80 billion is given by governments around the world to keep these fishing industries afloat. Uh,
Well,
because what's happening with as fish populations become diminished, they have to invest in more efficient technologies in order to extract the fewer and fewer fish. That's
yeah.
why we now have $100 million super trawlers, 100-kilometer long lines, 100-kilometer long drift nets and gill nets. And, we pulled one net out of the Southern Ocean from one ship, the Thunder. That net was 72 kilometers long and weighed 70 tons, one net from one ship.
What?
This is a kind of technology which is being used to really strip mine life out of the ocean. And
Yeah.
the oceans are dying. We're overfishing everything. We're polluting everything. Noise pollution, plastic pollution, chemical pollution, runoffs from herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, going on from agriculture. The oceans are being destroyed. I mean, since
Mm.
1950, there's been a 40% diminishment in phytoplankton in the sea. This is a serious situation. Phytoplankton provides 70% of the oxygen in the air we breathe and sequesters enormous amounts of CO2. If
Yeah.
phytoplankton disappears from the ocean, we die. We don't live on a planet without phytoplankton. And for the most
Yeah.
part, people are unaware of that. They think that all the oxygen comes from trees, like we've got to save the rainforest. Yeah, about 30% does, but 70%
Yeah.
comes
30%.
from the ocean. And we don't live on this planet with a dead ocean. It's as simple as that. And I like to equate it to this way. The Earth is a spaceship, and it's on this incredible voyage around the Milky Way. And every spaceship has a life support system that gives us everything we need, the air we breathe, the food we eat, regulates climate and temperature. And that
Mm.
life support system is maintained, it's operated by a crew of engineers. Those engineers keep everything running. We humans, we're not engineers, we're passengers. We're having a wonderful time entertaining ourselves, but what we are doing is we're killing off the engineers. We're murdering these engineers each and every day. And there's only so many engineers you can kill before the machinery begins to fall apart. We don't live on this planet without bees and trees and worms and fishes and all those creatures who are the engineers of our life support system. Uh,
Mm.
you know, we need them. They don't need us, actually. They're far more important ecologically than we are. But
Yeah.
because we have this anthropocentric point of view, which is most of humanity looks at it this way, we're number one. It was all created for us. We're the only species that really matters. We don't really give a shit about anything else. And if
True.
we continue with that attitude, we're not going to survive. We have to live in harmony with all of these other species. There's three basic laws of ecology. The first is the law of diversity. The strength of an ecosystem depends upon diversity within it. The second is the law of interdependence. All species within an ecosystem are interdependent with each other. And the third is the law of finite resources, that there's a limit to growth because there's a limit to carrying capacity. And when one species steals the carrying capacity from other species, that causes diminishment in both diversity and interdependence, and that leads to ecological collapse. And we'll be responsible for that.
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely the ones causing the harm. I don't think the whales or the bugs are doing anything wrong. Um. Okay. So, all right. So going back to that. Um. What are the main contributors? Like, a big thing for me is waste management. I think that's like one of the. I think it's probably the most dangerous thing at the moment. But I also know the fishing industry causes a lot of problems, also related to waste management as well. But when you go on these beaches, it's mostly plastic bottles and fishing gear that's all over the place. Um, what else is there? Like, is there any other layers to it? You mentioned pesticides. That's obviously water runoff ended up in the oceans and stuff like that. Just the general chemicals in the air now that we've got. What would you say in order of priority are the
Well,
things we need to go through?
You can't name any one thing. It's a combination of all of these things. There's
Yeah,
plastic pollution, chemical pollution, noise pollution, which is a major problem in the ocean. Um,
yeah,
but I think if I were to look at the more serious things, like climate change is up there, but probably the most serious thing is the diminishment of phytoplankton. And one of
right.
the things that's happening right now, especially with the recent announcement by the Trump administration, one of the great threats is deep sea mining, seabed mining. That can cause incredible destruction throughout the world's marine ecosystems. And how that is that what they want to do is they want to mine these ferromanganese nodules from the bottom of the ocean. Now, these are little potato-sized stones, and there's literally billions of them down there. And they're made of cobalt, nickel, manganese, and other, even gold's involved in them. Now, these little potato-sized nodules take about 200 million years to form. They crystallize at the bottom. But now they're living there. There's a whole ecosystem based down there. So they want to go down there with this mining equipment, 2 kilometers down. And so they're going to have a lot of noise and a lot of lights. It's going to cause a lot of damage on there. But that's
Yeah.
minor compared to the major damage, which is they're going to suck up these nodules in these vacuum tubes to the surface, extract the nodules, and throw the rest back. All that sediment is going to go back into the sea. It can
Ah,
take up to years and years to drift to the bottom as it spreads over a wide expanse. And as it sinks, it's going to leach oxygen out of the water, causing massive suffocation to all sorts of marine wildlife. And when it gets to the bottom, it's going to suffocate the benthic life on there as it covers it up.
yeah.
So I don't think there's been really much research into the ecological impacts. I don't think they really care on that. I've been monitoring this since 1977. I was in the dock in Honolulu when the first load of the Sedco 4245 was the name of the vessel, and it came into Honolulu with the first load of manganese nodules. It was an experimental thing done by the Canadian Nickel Company.
Right,
And I was interviewing the head of the company at the time for an article. And I wasn't too concerned at the time because he said it wasn't cost effective enough to do this. They were just doing an exploratory thing, but they didn't see that this would be happening for some time. But that was almost 50 years ago. But
right. Okay.
now things have changed economically so that now it is a profitable enterprise. They can see the profits in it, but it's also much more destructive than land-based mining.
Mm,
But again, I don't think they really care. So billions and billions of dollars are now being invested into these seabed mining ventures, and
right.
they're going to be taking place off of in the waters between Hawaii and the U.S., off Clipperton area, off of Madagascar, off the Cook Islands, all of these places that they're off the coast of Norway. So they're looking at all these places for deep sea mining, which when you take a look at all of those locations, you're creating vast clouds of silt
Sediment.
in all of
Yeah.
these areas. So I think it's going to be a major problem.
That's nuts. Like, I mean, the water filtration systems that like the oil and gas industry has, like, surely they could just create something where, once you're done with all this water that's got all this dirt in it, you can, just place nice water back in the ocean rather than the stuff with all the crap. Like, why isn't that an
Well, there
idea
might be
for
that possibility, but of course, it all comes down to,
money?
yeah, money, how much we're going to invest in this. But it
Yeah.
doesn't solve the problem of the destruction of benthic life right on the seabed. These are ecosystems that have never, ever been disrupted. Uh,
Yeah.
and we don't even know what the overall contribution of all of these various benthic species are to the health of the oceans overall.
Yeah.
But that sediment also is going to interfere with the sonar of, dolphins and whales and everything. Strangely,
Mm,
one of the concerns, one entity that is concerned about this is the U.S. Navy, because
right.
the
Because their sonars won't
possibility,
work.
yeah, they saw the possibility of causing a lot of disruption within their operations. So they have some serious concerns and actually have drafted papers to that impact effect. It's interesting. The
Right.
Pentagon also is one of the few government departments that takes climate change seriously, understanding the socioeconomic, political impacts or consequences of it. You're going to see much more environmental refugees moving from the south towards the north or also from the south towards the south again.
Hmm.
We're going to see a lot of that's going to happen. And environmental refugees is going to be a major, major problem going forward. because people have no choice. They're going to have to leave these areas because these areas are not going to be able to support life. So they're going to have to move to areas where they can. Just like fish population
Mm,
moving now, they're going away from their traditional migratory areas and moving in relationship with the changing water temperatures. So you're seeing fish species
yeah.
further north now than there normally would be.
Mm. Yeah, I mean it's going to get complicated, isn't it? Because it's not just a case of okay, the environmental flags, so global warming, for example. If you wanted to say that all the areas around the equator is going to get too hot, so everyone's going to have to move like north or south. It's not just that because it's the like okay, look at the mining industry, look at the oil and mining in particular. Like if you look at the mining industry, what goes on in Asia and Africa and stuff like that, there's a lot of reasons for people like needing to leave these countries, but there's already so many people that exist, and I think cramming more people into a smaller place is probably only going to lead to more issues unless they come up with like genuine ways of like how do we feed all these people without just like breeding animals to murder, for
Yeah,
the sake of it.
because you
Um,
can always have Soylent Green.
yeah, mate, the fish farms are such a problem in Greece. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not a massive fan of the fishing industry in general because I've seen the way, I'm not saying all, obviously, but I've seen the way like some commercial fishing vessels behave where they pick up anything and they'll just let it die in the nets, basically. I've seen turtles, I've seen dolphins tossed overboard as they've come into ports because they don't want to take a dolphin into a port. So there's just like dolphin carcasses, hanging around outside the place. So not a big fan in general. The fishing farms, whenever you anchor within about 4 miles, 3 miles of a fishing farm, and you've got any type of current, the water is horrendous. Like you can't see a meter down from there. You haven't got stuff growing on the rocks like you would have in the nice places. That's terrible for the environment. But I don't know. It seems like the only way to produce enough fish to feed people, apparently.
Well, fish farms are extremely destructive. Very chemically intensive, antibiotically intensive. Because of the antibiotics, uh, viruses emerge from these overpopulated areas. Those viruses cause zoonotic transmission to indigenous fish populations.
Yeah.
Salmon lice, for instance, then go on to indigenous salmon populations, and when they hitch onto the fingerlings, it's lethal. They're a major source of pollution in and of the areas. They bathe these animals, these salmon, every year. They're bathed in a bath of this chemical which destroys the sea lice, but also it's a molluscide, so it kills every mollusk within miles of these nets.
Oh, shit.
And also, it takes about 70 fish caught from the ocean to raise one fish on a salmon because they feed them fish pellets, which are made, of course, of fish meal and soy
Yeah.
and other things, but a lot of fish meal. So we're wiping out the small fishes, the herrings, the oolacans, the mackerel, and everything to convert them into fish meal. So about 40% of all of the fish that's caught commercially is rendered into fish meal. That's not
Mm,
fed just to salmon farms, but it's also fed to chickens and pigs on factory farms.
yeah.
So it's a major problem. But population it's a complicated thing. And when I was born, there were 3 billion people on the planet. There's now close to 8 billion, well, over 8 billion. And it's not going to go down. It can only
No.
go up. 8, 10, where does it begin? My generation, I was raised 50s, 60s, and 70s. That generation was the most materially wealthy generation in the history of humankind, and it
Yeah,
was the
definitely.
freest generation in the history of humankind. It'll never come again because the
Yeah.
resources are simply not available for
Yeah.
that. And also, laws have become far more restrictive in order to protect those diminishing resources. Things that I was able to do in the 60s and 70s, we can't do today. They'd blow us out of the water if we tried to do it.
Mm,
I once blockaded an entire sealing fleet for 2 weeks in Newfoundland. I wouldn't let them out of port. I couldn't do that today. So the laws are becoming far more repressive. I mean, people are getting really harsh sentences for very minor things. I think two women got 2 years in prison for splashing paint on a painting in a museum. But the thing is, the painting was covered with a glass plate, so they didn't damage it.
yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, but they got 2 years to send them a lesson. So how do you get 2 years when you didn't actually cause any damage? I mean, would have been a minor fine, if anything, normally. But I mean,
Mm,
those penalties are going to become increasingly more, um, strict
yeah.
as things go forward. And where does it begin? And then again, what is the solution? People who are intelligent enough to see population as a problem, they respond by not having children. they're probably the people who should have kids because
Yeah,
90% of the kids born on this planet are brought into families that don't love them, don't educate them, don't nurture them, don't, these are people who become problems later in their life.
yeah.
Uh, I think it was all summed up in a movie called Idiocracy one time, which demonstrated how that.
Oh, so many people have told me to watch this. Like now you said it, I am going to watch it 100%. I'm definitely going to watch it. No, I've most of my friends who've recommended me watch this movie, they were just like, apparently similar views to what are expressed in this movie, or like I've got a similar outlook on the way things are going to go. I don't know, but everyone said I need to watch it.
Well, the president of the movie of the United States in the Idiocracy is not much different than the president today.
So it was like a foreseeing type of movie, then I suppose in that
Pretty
case.
much, pretty much. Basically, it
Yeah.
takes a soldier and a prostitute volunteered for a project which puts them to sleep, and then the Pentagon forgets about them, and
Right. Okay.
they wake up 400 or 500 years in the future, and
Right.
these two normal people become are the most intelligent people on the planet
Right.
because of all the people, all the intelligent people not having children, and all the stupid people having children, and
Right. Okay.
you know.
I tell you what, we got there a lot quicker than the movie thought we would, though. Then, wouldn't it? If they've gone 500 years into the future, it only took like what 15 or 20 since that film
Yeah.
came out. Yeah,
Yeah,
to get
that's
nuts.
and it's going to get worse. I mean, because the greater the population, the dumber down it becomes.
Well, it's resources, mate. At the end of the day, it's just like the reason why they're going down into these, to the ocean floor to get all these like different minerals and stuff is because they need more computers, they need more phones, they need more stuff to put in your clothes to make it work properly. It's just all, and yeah, it's only going to get more. It's only going to get more intense. Have you ever heard during your career, like, have you ever had a conversation with someone who's like genuinely intelligent in a position of actual power, like legislatively, federally, who you've thought, okay, they have got good ideas. Like, have you ever been impressed by anyone in this space?
I have, but they don't usually last very long. Uh,
Right.
a friend of mine was Minister of the Environment for France, and
Okay.
after a year and a half, he just quit. He says it doesn't matter. He says whatever I do is countered by the ministers for industry or mining or whatever. He said that they have the power. And any time a politician gets into a position where they can make a difference, that's almost political suicide
Yeah.
because you're going to make decisions which are unpopular with the farmers or with the fishermen or whatever, and you're going to lose your position. You're going to, so basically, everybody wants change, but nobody wants to change. You know?
Yeah, I think the problem is like when you look at, I blame politicians for like every single issue on planet Earth because they've been in control and they've been able to stop stuff or start stuff or create stuff. Every industry they complain about, they regulated it, all that type of thing. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's like the system that actually is in place to further advance us is actually a business that just like operates for other businesses that are their friends and they want to get more rich. And it's like, I think the idea that the Romans had like way back, all the Greeks has just gone to shit. It's completely morphed into something else. And it's so evident when you
Yeah.
talk about the environment because no one has a 20 or a 30-year plan. Everyone's got an election cycle plan for planet Earth,
Right.
which is bonkers.
I think Edward Abbey put it good. He says, people are sheep and taxes are how the sheep are shorn.
Yeah, fair. Yes, yes, I had to pay my taxes this week, mate. I won't start on taxes because it's a very sore subject for me at the moment. Don't believe in it. Okay, so just in terms of you said like you have met some people and you said like your friend who was the environmental minister for France. Have you ever seen anything fundamentally change like out of a political body or something for the good? I mean, I know we see a lot of small wins in the news from like different countries, but it's like you said, the subsidizing industries that are actually destroying Earth at the same time. Have you seen like a bill in a certain country? Have you seen an idea from a group of engineers in a certain country? And you're like, that could point us in the right direction now.
I've seen them try, but not get very far. But when you look at the history of social revolutions going back hundreds of years, governments never initiate any change.
Yeah.
They make change under considerable public pressure. Abraham Lincoln didn't free the slaves in the United States. The anti-slavery movement took 100 years. It was
Yeah.
Wilberforce. It was Douglas. It finally, it gets women didn't get the right to vote in the United States because some politician gave it to them. In fact, the suffragettes movement, their biggest opposition was President Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah.
And when they finally got that 14th Amendment, Wilson was the one who had to sign it as president. And because of that, he gets the credit for giving women the vote when he was the biggest critic of the whole thing in the first place. So I think probably the only politician that I know who actually made significant social change was probably Kemal Ataturk in Turkey, who overthrew the Sultan. And that was one of the first countries to give women the vote. And Ataturk said, "How can we have a country where our mothers and daughters and sisters have no rights?" So he was the
Mm.
one who brought in the right to vote in a Muslim country.
Yeah.
He also said that the church or Islam could never control the government. It had to be secular. So those are two of the things that he did back then. But so those are probably that's probably the only known example I know of a politician actually doing something that kind of progressive. But
Wow.
normally politicians they don't call it the art of the possible for nothing.
Mm.
Politicians make decisions when it's convenient for them to make decisions.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Right, mate. Also, I wanted to talk about your recent episode in, was it jail or prison? Like, did they actually properly imprison you, or did they just hold you for like a long time there?
Well, since 2012, Japan issued a red notice on me for
Yeah.
interfering with their. Actually, the reason the red notice, well, my real crime was for a television show which humiliated Japan, the Whale Wars show. And they wanted the retribution. So I'm the only person in the history of the Interpol red notice to be put there for conspiracy to trespass. Didn't even do it. It's conspiracy.
Conspiracy to dress.
I wasn't even there at the time of
Right. And it's not like it was the Pentagon neither. So,
no, but what happened was, for 14 years I've been on that damn Interpol red notice, so it's been difficult. And I was arrested in 2012 in Germany. I escaped from Germany. I had to cross the Atlantic, North America, and through the Pacific without any papers. They had taken my passports. And then, I was allowed to come back to the U.S. because the Secretary of State said that it was a bogus charge. So I was allowed to be in the U.S. and then I was allowed to come to France. But last year, I went on board. I went on my ship to. We were going to go do the Northwest Passage and confront the Japanese whalers. And when
oh,
we refueled in ice in Greenland, they flew 12 Danish cops. A SWAT team came from Denmark to board my ship and arrest me. I thought, well, that's a bit of an overkill, isn't it, having a SWAT team? But then when I saw what the red notice said, the Japanese described me as an extremely dangerous armed terrorist. I can understand why they sent the SWAT team. I'm never a kid.
right. Okay.
Anyway, they held me in prison there, and every month they brought me up and gave me another 28 days. And for extradition, I wasn't on trial; it was for an extradition. And finally, in December 17th, the decision was to extradite me to Japan. But on December 18th, the Attorney General of Denmark made the political decision to release me. And that was because of a million signatures on petitions, direct appeals from President Macron of France, President Lula da Silva from Brazil, the Pope was another one, Sylvia Earle, Jane Goodall, James Cameron, all of these people. That was the reason that he made the political decision. So then so I'm in France, and last month Macron himself shook my hand, welcomed me home, said I would always be safe in France. But and they just suspended the red notice until June when they'll make a final determination because
Mm.
what I'm trying to expose here is not just for me, but the fact that the Interpol Red Notice has been abused by countries for political reasons, going
Oh
after
yeah.
whistleblowers and dissidents and activists and not criminals as it's supposed to be. I mean, this is supposed to be for serial killers, war criminals, and major drug traffickers. It's not meant,
Mm.
whistleblowers.
They
So
fly around on private jets anyway.
yeah, so this is why we're trying to expose this. So a victory for me here would be a victory for a lot of people who
Yeah.
can put on that list. So anyway, that was the thing. But I wasn't a bad time in prison. I had a panoramic view of the fjord. I could see whales from there, and everybody's friendly. I was the only non-indigenous person in the prison, part of the prison I was in, and they were all very friendly people. The prison guards are friendly. People of Greenland were very friendly and everything. The Danes not so much, but but anyway, it was an adventure. I turned it into a campaign. In fact, I think we focused more attention on Japan's continued illegal whaling operations, in addition to focusing attention on the Faroese killing of dolphins and whales in the Danish Faro Islands. So,
Yeah.
from a campaign point of view, it was quite successful.
That stuff in the Faro Islands is just insane. Like, so in the UK, we've got fox hunting, which is completely ridiculous. It's this sport that aristocrats did back in the day where they dress up in silly outfits and, go and hunt. It's ridiculous. In the Faroe Islands, they do that with, is it whales or dolphins? What is
Pilot
it?
whales and dolphins, pilot whales and
Yeah,
dolphins.
yeah.
I thought the fox hunt's illegal in the UK.
Oh, it goes on off and on. It depends which government we've got. If they've got rich friends that like fox hunting, then it's legal again. But it
What
comes
was it,
and goes. It probably always will.
what was it Oscar Wilde once said was the unedible, no, the unmentionable in full support of the unedibles.
Yeah, that's a metaphor. Yeah. Right. So the Faroe Islands. Is there not like rules in Europe that?
First of all, it's illegal. Killing whales and dolphins is illegal in the EU. Faroe
So
Islands
how can they do that?
Faroe Islands are part of Denmark, and 85% of the Faroese have Danish passports, EU passports. Therefore, they enjoy the benefits of the EU. But they've been given an exemption by Denmark, and I don't see how they can enjoy the benefits and at the same time break the rules. So every year they round up anywhere from 800 to 2,000 dolphins or pilot whales. They drive them ashore.
I
Uh,
didn't know it was that many.
yeah, brutally kill them. It's sort of like a tradition. It's a blood sport, really. They say they do it for the meat because they need the meat, aside from the fact that the Faroese enjoy the highest per capita income of anybody in Europe. And
Yeah.
they sell New Zealand lamb in the Faroe Islands, which is a place where there's more sheep than people. So
Mm,
anything you can buy in a supermarket in Europe, you can buy in the Faroe Islands. So it's not for that. Plus, the other thing is that whale meat, dolphin meat, is very toxic. It has high levels of methyl mercury and heavy metals. It's illegal in Denmark to eat pork if it's got heavy metals in it, but for somehow or other they give exemptions to the Faroese. And the Faroese children have the highest levels of methyl mercury poisoning of any group of people on the planet. Methyl mercury poisoning is a serious issue there. But it's all tradition. We've been doing it for 1,000 years. Nobody's going to tell us we can't do it. It's part of this. It's a strange culture that identifies itself by driving up innocent creatures up on the shore and wipe it out in entire families. I mean, they seem to amuse themselves by ripping the fetuses out of the pregnant females, poking the children, poke the eyes out of them. They bring the children down to basically mutilate the bodies. It's some
yeah.
sort of really, really bizarre, primitive, savage, barbaric rituals. And they criticize me for using the word barbaric ritual and everything. Well, that's what it is. I'm just calling it for what it is. And,
Yeah.
we've been fighting this since 1983. And people say, well, you haven't ended it. I said, yeah, but nothing gets finished overnight. We were fighting the seal hunt in Canada for years and years before we finally destroyed the market. Slavery wasn't ended overnight. Women didn't get the vote overnight. You have to be persistent. You have to be determined. You have to be stubborn. And most of all, you have to be passionate, courageous, and imaginative if you're going to end these things. It doesn't matter what pursuit you're doing. Those are the virtues that you have to cultivate in order to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, mate. Yeah, 100%. Um, Mate, looking back on your life, um, is there a particular event or a particular series of things that happened that you're most proud of that you can say, we did this and this did lead to this change, or is there any particular types of activism that you'll remember most fondly?
Well, I led campaigns to the Southern Ocean from 2005 up until 2016, every year interfering with the Japanese whaling industry, blocking them, harassing them, cutting down their quotas every year. In fact, in 2013, they only took 10% of their quota. So overall, during that period of time, we prevented them from killing 6,500 whales. So that's one of the things I'm most proud of achieving. And finally, we drove them out of the Southern Ocean Whale Sanctuary, and finally, the sanctuary is being fully protected. I never could understand how anybody in the world could defend what Japan was doing when you keep in mind that it's called the Southern Ocean Whale Sanctuary. You don't kill whales in a sanctuary, and that's what they were doing. And they were doing it in violation of the global moratorium on commercial whaling set by the International Whaling Commission. Blatantly illegal. We took them to the International Court of Justice in 2014, which ruled that it was illegal, and that shut them down for 1 year, and then they went back again, just ignored the ICJ, because the ICJ, like the United Nations, like all these other international bodies, have absolutely no powers of enforcement.
Yeah.
All these international rules, regulations, laws, and treaties are worthless without enforcement. And so the ocean is really the Wild West. People can do whatever they want out there, and they get away with
Yeah,
it. So I always find that people say, well, how do you get away with blockading these vessels and sinking these vessels and ramming these vessels? I said, for the same reason they get away with what they're doing.
yeah,
If they want to come after me, then well, how come they're not going after them? If I confiscate an illegal net from a fishing boat and take that net and we turned it over to Interpol, actually, in fact, I'm probably the only person in the history of Interpol to be working with Interpol while at the same time having a red notice on me and wanted by Interpol. But when we take that net out of the water, that it's not illegal. In fact, in 2010, we intervened against a bluefin tuna operation in the Mediterranean, and I caught them with 900 bluefin tuna in a net had been caught illegally. What they do is they take these live tuna and they transport them slowly to Malta and fatten them up to sell them to Japan. So this was a 900 living tuna in the net. I told them to release them, and when they refused, I put divers in the net and we cut the net and released all 900 of them. And the next year, I was in Scotland, and my ship was arrested in Britain, and the charge was theft and vandalism. I destroyed their property. I said, but this fish were illegally caught. And the British court said, doesn't matter, it was their property, whether it was illegal or not. I said, oh, so if I steal a bag of money from a guy who just robbed a bank, I've stolen money from this guy? And they said, well, you had no right, it's their property. I said, this is ridiculous. Anyway, we went to court and we won the case. I had to post a 700,000 pound bond to release my ship. But a year later, we won the case. And then the fishing company then got lawyers, and then they actually said publicly, "We'll just keep throwing money at Sea Shepherd until we win." And they took us to court, to the Court of Appeals, and they won the appeal. And then we went to the Supreme Court, and we won, and they had to pay us £1.5 million. So one of the things over the years that's very important to look at is that not only in 50 years have I never injured anybody, but I've never been convicted of a criminal crime, and I've never lost a civil suit. So we have an unblemished record
it's the
in that
record.
regard. So they can call me all the names they want. They can call me a pirate. They can call me a terrorist. I don't really care because the facts speak for themselves. And the facts are is that we never injured anybody or been convicted. In fact, when they started calling me in the 80s, they called me a pirate. I said, okay, well, if you want to call me a pirate, I'll be a pirate because you know what? Pirates got shit done. You know, got through all the bureaucracy and they got things done. Officially, I am actually officially a pirate because the Ninth Circuit Court Judge Alex Kaczynski labeled me a pirate. So I've got an official designation as a pirate. So I'm actually quite proud of that
Quite
because
jealous of that one.
I'm quite proud of it because pirates do get things done. Because when you look into the past in piracy, pirate ships were the first ships to be democratic. They elected their captains, they elected their officers. They didn't discriminate on race or gender. There were women pirates. There were, Blackbeard's first officer was an African. Uh,
Yeah,
and not only that, one of the most famous pirates of all, John Paul Jones, was the founder of the United States Navy. And not many people realize he was also the founder of the Russian Navy because after the American Revolution, Catherine the Great invited into Russia to put her navy together. And so you have all these great pirates like Sir Walter Raleigh and Sir Francis Drake. Notice the Sir in front of them, and everything.
mm,
So those were pirates. Now the difference was what's a privateer and a pirate? A privateer was somebody authorized to be a pirate. So,
right.
but when they weren't authorized, so it was okay to steal from the Spanish if you're giving the money to the Crown of England.
Yeah,
If you did it on your own, then that became a crime. But I'm going, what was so bad about stealing money from the Spanish? Where did the Spanish get their gold? They stole it from the Indians. So is it really
mm,
an act of piracy to steal gold from somebody who stole it in the first place? And also, when you think at the
yeah.
time, at that time in the late 1600s, a 10-year-old boy could be hung in London for stealing a loaf of bread. It wasn't a big jump to become a pirate. I always like what
Yeah.
I always like what uh, Anne Bonny once said when confronted with the fact that it was the death penalty for being a pirate, and her response was, "Well, thank God for that too. If it wasn't for that, every idiot would be doing this job."
Recruitment levels would be way up if they weren't killing us all. Yeah, it is odd, isn't it? How the rules are just changed and chopped and moved and stuff, but that is the world we live in. And mate, what's your goal for like the years going forward? Because you've done so much already, you've dedicated so much of your life to trying to protect Earth. Um, eh, what goals have you got moving forward, like with the conservation work that you're doing now, and also the foundation that you're running?
I don't have any long-term goals, and I'll tell you why, is that I don't think much about the future. I don't get depressed about it. I don't get pessimistic about it because I don't have any power over the future at all. I have power over the present. So I focus on the present. What can I do now? That'll define what the future will be, but I can't worry what that future will be. So, I protect an ecosystem here, I protect a species there. But if you start worrying about the future, then you're going to get depressed and all pessimistic and everything about it. So I learned that was one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned. In 1973, I was a volunteer medic for the American Indian Movement occupation of Wounded Knee in South Dakota. We were protesting the Fort Laramie Treaty, which had been violated. And we were surrounded by U.S. federal troops. They fired 20,000 rounds a night into the village. They killed 2 people and wounded 46. And there were about 360 of us in the village. So I went to Russell Means, who was the leader for the American Indian Movement, and I said, we don't have any hope here. The odds are against us. We're hopelessly outnumbered. We can't win. I mean, what's the point of us continuing? And that's when he told me, he says, don't worry about that. He said, we're not concerned about the odds against us. We're not concerned about winning or losing. We're here because it's the right thing to do, the right time to do it, and the right place to be. So he said, don't worry about the future. You got no control over that. We do what we do, and that will define what the future will be. He also taught me something else because Russell had been shot in the stomach by the FBI who tried to kill him. And they missed. They missed killing him. And they also were targeting Dennis Banks and John Trudell, who were also American Indian leaders. The three of them decided they all became movie stars. And the protection in America is you've got celebrity, you're protected. So Russell went on to star in Last of the Mohicans and Pocahontas and different things like that. Yeah, in America, they don't kill celebrities.
That's
So
true.
when people say, "Well, what do you've become sort of a celebrity in this movement? What does that mean to you?" I says, "It's a kind of a self-defense thing, really."
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah, it's the easiest way to not get that massive sentence that you probably get thrown down on
Well,
you otherwise in
since
some
the year
ways.
2000, about 2,500 environmentalists around the world have been murdered. You don't even know about it because nobody reports about it, unless it's Chico
Well,
Mendes or, Karen Silkwood or somebody like that, or somebody prominent. Unless it's a celebrity, nobody knows about it.
mm,
Because it's not reported. It's considered, well, normal. I mean, I'll tell you, if one logger in the Pacific Northwest broke his finger because of a protester, it'll be the front page of the New York Times. But the media is controlled by corporations and they report. When Donald Trump says fake news, that's bullshit. But it's not fake news, it's no news. The
yeah,
media reports on what it wants to report and it doesn't report on what it doesn't want to report.
yeah.
I mean, they just, Israel just attacked that peace ship in the Mediterranean with drones and hardly reported anywhere in the mainstream media, really.
Heard that.
So I mean, attacking a civilian ship in international waters by a military of a country, and it's not even. I mean, it's if it had been, I'll tell you right now, if it had been, say, Iran, it'd be all over the news.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
the media is very selective in what it reports. I mean, I don't trust mainstream media at all on anything.
yeah.
I remember in British Columbia when we were campaigning there, Burston and Marsteller, which is one of the largest PR firms in the world, they were the PR firm for the forest industry. They were the PR firm for the government and the PR firm for the newspaper and the televisions. So the same PR firm representing media, corporation, and government. So they package the whole thing together to justify everything they're doing, supporting pipelines, supporting oil tankers, supporting, clear-cut logging, all of those things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think with the news, it's like the term fake news, I think, is being used in the wrong way. But in terms of the point of it is being fake, it's all about clicks and how much money they can make. It's weird that we get our human information from businesses that are designed to make profit. That just seems bizarre.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I don't know how to fix that one.
Well, the other thing
I'll
too, the
move
other
on from
thing
that.
too, the other thing too, you have to spend about $1 billion to become president of the United States because you got to
Mm.
pay for all that advertising. The people own the airwaves, so why do we have to charge for that? I mean, you take a country like Canada or France, there's limits set on how much you can spend if you're a politician. But in the
Yeah,
United
same in the
States,
UK.
yeah, in the United States, there's no limits. The more money you raise,
Oh,
the
it's crazy.
more exposure you can get. So
Yeah. That part of politics is crazy. And that I think that would I don't know if it would solve problems in America, but I know like in the UK, I think the limit is like 140,000 that a party is allowed to spend on advertising. So they go on television shows, but it's not like commercials on TV. And like, gosh, when you go to America and like there's an election on, it's like every 10 minutes there's a commercial coming on. It's like, vote for this person for this. And I'm like, well,
And
this is nuts.
they're free to say anything they want. The truth is not a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Well, listen, Paul, thanks very much for, giving my viewers the time of day that you have done. And it's been great just listening to some of your worldviews, actually, and absorbing some of your metaphors. I'm looking forward to listening back to this one.
Thanks.
If people want to actively follow you and participate and assist, what's the best way for them to start doing that?
Well, our website is CaptainPaulWatsonFoundation.com. Go to paulwatson.com and sign up, or go to the websites for Sea Shepherd France or Sea Shepherd Brazil.
Yep.
That way.
Brilliant. Okay, we'll do that.